Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. We are live on Spreaker and on Facebook. For all of those watching on Facebook right now, we unfortunately cannot get the audio to transfer through, but you can hear us. You can hear our lovely voices. You can see our lovely faces.
Sorta. We're behind these snowballs here.
We're not snowballs. You're snowballing. It's just because my internet's lagging right now. So hopefully the video cut turns out good. And if it does, then we'll have a video for YouTube. But anyway.
You can see we've got clothes on. We're wearing clothes. Like Chris always says that I'm never wearing clothes. I'm in dirty, stinky work clothes right now. So whatever.
Yeah, you are. You always are. You're a stinky, dirty, dirty boy. Anyway, tonight's Cellar Door Skeptics Podcast is back. And we got a controversial episode for y'all. First, we're going to tackle a Michigan Right to Life video that they adopted from some gentleman named Peter Heck. And no, his real name isn't Hell. I didn't censor myself. It's really Heck.
That would be too perfect.
That would be too perfect. What we're going to do is we're going to dissect their statistics and we're going to present it with some passion because I'm very opinionated on this topic. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take on look at a ghost, right? We did ghost stories last week. Now we're going to kind of talk about InfraSound. And we're going to talk about, can that create what people think ghosts are? And kind of what does it have to do with life today? Our third segment is going to talk about cash for charity. And that's kind of a topic that Hannah brought up. And he said, hey, this is an experiment where they give cash to the poor and trust them to do the right thing. We'll end the episode. We will. With healthcare price hikes and how it correlates to the CEO pay. And I'm very, very excited for that one. But anyway, welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. This is episode 55. We are live. We have moved our live time officially to 9 o'clock. That way Hannah can get over here and doesn't have to speed and do all his
I still speed.
Bad stuff.
I still speed. I still just barely make it to all my deadlines. I am always classically, consistently 10 minutes late everywhere I go. I can't help it. It's just who I am.
Which is why we moved the show to 9 o'clock. So when he's 10 minutes late, I'm not screaming at him to get into the damn house. Because that's
last
where we were
time
at.
I was literally, I was about 2 blocks away and I just get where the are you? Dude, I'm right here. Chill.
Yeah. Okay, Hannah. Anyway, so we have a great episode, and we want to start it off with talking about Michigan Right to Life. And I don't know, we could play the video, Hannah. We can do that.
Yeah.
We could talk about it a little bit.
Well, I could talk about basically what the whole reason why this is even a topic that we're considering. I was driving in my car, my XM satellite radio is linked on NPR One, which is or on NPR Now, which is awesome. I have NPR One on my phone. The app is great too. But there's a commercial that comes on, and I can't hear very well. So like it's playing, it's like all these people died in the war, and they're making little banging noises, and I was like, what is this? And the music is like this score is getting louder into a crescendo, and then like this pouring these BBs onto this can sound, but it's like all a long time. I was like, what is this death commercial? And then it flips over and starts explaining that this is the Michigan Right to Life, whatever. And I was like, no way, that was an abortion commercial. So I flip over to just anything I could get on the internet to find out what the heck it was, and I found it was actually Michigan Right to Life, and I wanted to see what their numbers were and see if their numbers are legit, because that's one thing I love debunking is bad numbers and bad science when it comes to abortion or any kind of medical or scientific claims. So that's what I started the research, and that's the reason why we wanted to kind of get this on here to talk about.
Yep, and you all know me. For me, it's I'm aggressively against right to life. I have a very hard time with it. It's not something... I mean, I don't even enjoy talking about it anymore, to be honest with you, because there's so many people that have so much bullshit information. I'd rather them just come out and say, well, the reason I believe this is because of my religion. Oh, okay, well, that we can skip past the actual science that demonstrates what we should be talking about. We just skip past that, and let's just go right to why your faith somehow should trump women's rights. And I don't mean to say Trump in the aspect of Trump, like I'm not talking about the candidate that is failing to run for president right now. I'm talking about the fact that everybody's belief system somehow trumps a woman's right to her own body. But we could get into that in a second. We don't have to jump right into that. So for those of you watching the video, we're actually going to be able to play the commercial here in just a second. So Hannah, I'm going to go ahead and start the commercial. Just be forewarned, if I have to stop it, I have to hit 3 buttons, buddy.
I'll be quiet.
And so that silence that you hear is because the second video is got a silence at the beginning. And so what they talk about is they're trying to explain why there is all these beads, right? BBs, I guess. Is
Each
the nice
BB counts for 1,000 deaths.
Yes. And so what they're trying to do is demonstrate how many lives have
Right
been
where you
snuffed
are.
out.
I just want you to, right there in your seats, just shut your eyes. What you're about to hear are the sounds of metal BBs striking the side of a tin can. For every BB that strikes, it represents 10,000 lives lost in the wars of America's past. 10,000 lives for every BB. This is the reality of what is occurring in your country. The American Revolution, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean conflict, the conflict in Vietnam, September 11th and the War on Terror. Since 1973, the War on the Unborn Child.
Whoa. That's a lot.
It's a bit of
It's like they're just shattering all over. It's like all over the thing. This is ridiculous. Sorry.
serious, man. Take it serious.
That's kind of hard. Misinformation is really hard to take seriously.
God help us.
No, God won't help us because good. Anyway, all right. So let's get into the statistics because I think that is more important, right, Hannah? That's probably more important.
Yep, it is. So basically, understanding what they were talking about there is that in one BB counted for 1,000 deaths. So they start off with the history of the United States, and they went through each war. I went through just all of the deaths in the history of American wars. And we, according to basic estimation, are approximately 1.354 million soldiers have died in American wars. And this actually includes the conflicts, too. And most of this information was pulled back from Wikipedia and a couple other sources they were linked into pretty halfway decent historical sources. But, I mean, 1.3 million, so that's 1,300 BBs. That's really not that many. And they talk about the number of abortions since Roe v. Wade in 1973 is they're saying 58 million deaths. That's the current estimate right now. They're calling them deaths. 58 million abortions. So that's 58,000 BBs. So, I mean, that's a lot if you compare it to the number of people that have died in all of American wars. But once again, this is probably something that you would say that there's a false equivalency here, is that you don't call it full life at what point, or what is your argument between those two numbers there?
Okay, well, there's two different things, right? I mean, there's a couple of different things that we can look at. And the first thing that I would, challenge is what you would consider a life, right? Is a life considered something that started in the mother's womb, was there for a week, and was miscarrying? If that's the case, why aren't we looking at miscarriages? And maybe you have a statistic.
Oh yeah, I went deep into
that, right? So we have miscarriages, and you. So that's the big thing: is how do you define this? Where does the defining mark come from? How do we get to that extent so that we can genuinely understand what we're talking about? Because it's not fair. It's not fair to say, well, anything that pretty much is after conception, so basically after you have sex and the sperm injects into the egg, is considered abortion. And there's different schools of theories on this. And we could get into a little bit later, because I understand where the statistics show. I understand what the right to life people like to argue. And there's something called viability. There's something called fetal pain. We could talk about, the autonomy of a woman versus a fetus. And so I just want to be careful that we don't get too far into that. But those are important justifications. So the big thing here is literally the video doesn't explain that. There is no discussion. They're taking a soundbite and running with it. They are not actually going to define it. So they're not even like Prager University there, at least they try to define this shit.
Yeah, they don't give the full-on, moment of life. They're essentially going from, as far as I know, most conservative groups go, the moment of inception, and or the moment of conception. That's their line. That's where they draw it, and they don't specify in this, but we can very comfortably say that's their claim. So I have made this argument a few times. I actually wrote a blog about it once, because someone said that gay marriage would result in 900,000 more abortions every year, and I concluded that was absolutely ridiculous, just because of the physiology necessary to create babies and how gay people are just not quite set up to do that. They need medical assistance in order to conceive. So I went through the miscarriage, and I basically said that, well, if abortion is bad, God is the king of abortions. The miscarriage, a natural miscarriage, I personally think that it would be the equivalency of an abortion. And so if you're saying that God is all powerful, he is all knowing and controls everything, he is either choosing to have that happen to you, choosing to end that life, or he just doesn't care and he's hands off. And so we're looking at a few things that are difficult for people to explain away when it comes to the religious perspective, and the fact that they would call abortions bad, sad, or evil as, maybe an explanation for God gave us miscarriages as part of the sin of Eve. Well, that's a little bit extreme, don't you think? I mean, if he loves every bit of life. So I always go back to the miscarriage aspect, and I think when you look into the science, basically what people know is there's approximately 4.4 million confirmed pregnancies in the U.S. every year. So just for the beginning, we'll talk about the United States numbers. So 900,000 to 1 million of those end in pregnancy losses. So roughly 500,000 pregnancies each year end in miscarriage. And we're looking at around 22.7%. That's about what we're getting. That, almost 30%. That's a pretty big number. So we can talk to different scientists who talk about some other things. I found another person who says that the actual number is closer to 30% of pregnancies, said author Dr. Zev Williams, and we'll include the link to this miscarriage link. It says that he's the director of the program for early and recurrent pregnancy loss at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. So he's saying 30%. So since 1973, we have a total of 58 million abortions. Well, using that 30% number, since 1973 in the yearly numbers, the yearly birth rates, let's say that they're pretty consistent. We're going to be at 40 million to 56 million pregnancies since then, and 30% miscarriages on that. That's 43,000 to 56,000 BBs. Well, there were 58,000 BBs in the abortion thing there. So between those two numbers, we've had pretty similar numbers of miscarriages. and abortion. So is God trying to settle the score? Is he breaking even with medicine and the atheists and the godless heresies over at Planned Parenthood? I would love to hear their explanations for that, but there's usually a little bit of double think, and those are the numbers that I like to put out. And I guess world numbers are even better. There's 211 million pregnancies every year. Approximately 30% of those collapse into miscarriage. That's, what did I get? I got 63.3 million miscarriages every year. And in the statistics from the World Health Organization, which I'm going to put in a link into our little outline, they say that roughly 46 million pregnancies every year end in induced abortion. So God's winning the worldwide battle.
Yeah, in an aspect. Yeah, look at that. God, you're more of an asshole and more of an aborter than the rest of the world is. And
well,
you're one person.
It's an important thing to talk about.
But so that goes back to what is the statistics, right? What are the actual statistics? How can they claim that all these BBs and all these people have aborted? And really, is it taking a life? And see, that's what pisses me off about this this video, man. Explicit tag.
Yeah, right. I think we just hit one.
We hit one. But that's what pisses me off about this video is that they're taking an emotional argument. And they're making assumptions. They're leading you to the water. They're telling you what they want. They're not actually saying, "Hey, by the way, this is why we feel that at conception, this is a fetus is a baby." They're not even talking about that. They don't talk about the zygote. They don't talk about the fetus. They don't talk about any of that stuff. They're just making a claim. Now, I will grant that Peter Huck's position is a little bit more widespread than this video, right? But that would be like if we took clips of Donald Trump, hint, hint, and basically made him look like a dumbass, that everything he says is a dumbass. And in all fairness, he says a lot of dumbass things. And if we want to look at that and analyze that, if I make a 2.5-minute video, does that make him right, or me right, and him wrong? Does that make Donald Trump a dumbass? No, you can't just take that fucking 2.5-minute video and go, oh, everything I just heard means he's a dumbass. You can't do that. That's not how statistics work, man. It's just, it's infuriating that they would think about that.
The one on this, the statistics, so their numbers are legit. I looked at them as best I could, and their numbers are legitimate.
That's not what I'm saying, though. I'm not saying that their numbers aren't legit. I'm telling you is that, again, it would be like if I decided this answer, and therefore it's right.
Okay.
That's what they're saying. They're telling you, statistically, in their opinion, how many people have aborted babies, right?
Yeah, it's an appeal to emotion. They're trying to appeal to people's emotions, and this is a very effective tool at catching someone's confirmation bias.
Yes.
So someone coming in with a dislike of abortion is really going to be pushed further because they don't like it.
Yep. So I've done research on this. I mean, I've been involved in helping people plan for debates. We've looked at this. And I'll be honest, this is one of the topics that I've tried to avoid, even on this show, because I don't want to be the grandstand. I'm an ally. I'm not the mouthpiece. And I want to be as much of an ally as I can. But I feel this video is just so bullshit and invasive. It's kind of like a blog that a friend of mine posted. And she posts this blog, and basically they use an argument. And let me find the name of the blog a second. It's called Nurses, Babies Born Alive After Abortions. They're using an emotional argument. That's what they're using. They don't even actually talk about real statistics in here. They're using an argument to emotion. So I took that article and I broke it down. And it applies to this video too. Because even if you granted all these different things, you have to look at when do the actual abortions happen, the majority of them, right? And when do most of the miscarriages happen? And if they're the same, what's the difference, right? How can you determine and say there's a difference? Because if a miscarriage, if you can't try a woman for a miscarriage, how can you try a woman for an abortion? And I can already see the pro-lifers doing this, and I know I'm making visuals in my camera because I'm getting actiony. But the thing here is that most abortions, 65.8% of abortions take place within the first 8 weeks of the pregnancy. 91.4% of abortions occur within the first 13 weeks. The first 13 weeks. Do we need to get into what happens? Do we need a gestation and go, okay, what's gestation? What happens between there? What's the rate of survival? Before 13 weeks, there's almost a 0% survival rate. So I'm not going to say there is zero. I'm going to say it's like less than 1%, right? And that's the thing. There's such a less of a chance. At 22 weeks, it's between 0 and 10% survival rate. Between 0 and 22 weeks. Guess how many abortions happen after 21 weeks, Hannah?
I'm going to say less than 30 or 40%.
How about 1.3 fucking percent?
So basically,
1.3.
people find out they're pregnant, and they either know or don't know exactly what they need to do. They can maybe fight with it, deal with it for a little while. I would love to hear someone's story if they had an abortion, or if they know someone, or if they know what it's like, or if they work at one of these facilities, like how long people typically wrestle with this. But in my understanding, usually people know pretty quickly that if this is a good situation, this is an accidental situation, or if this is just something that they cannot handle and they're going to go through with this. Or like in my case with my wife, we knew far enough in advance that we set up our healthcare plan to get ready for having a baby. Like, there was no question that was supposed to happen, and we wanted it to happen. So, like, I would think that there's a pretty good understanding of the people who do get pregnant, what they're going to do pretty quickly.
Yeah. And we could get into that. That's actually an interesting topic to talk about, because I probably disagree with a lot of people. I believe women should be able to have an abortion up till the third trimester, and then technically up until they're almost going to give birth, because I don't think we should regulate that. Now, I would probably put more, I would be for legislation that would be more beneficial to allow the woman to carry to term, unless it's, going to harm them. But honestly, it's not my choice. And that gets into the viability. And then that's the thing that most right-to-lifers miss. They don't talk about the viability, and all they want to do is claim that, well, you have two human beings, therefore they cancel each other out, so we can't do it. Well, hold on a second. What justifies this? What justifies that? And I'll be honest, Hannah, I have the statistics, and maybe one of these times, because you and I were going to actually have this debate one of these times, or this discussion.
I don't think it'll be a debate. It'll just be more like a. I like to keep it more just low key. I'm not such an adamant supporter of it, but I understand its importance and its necessity in our society. And you are a little bit more pro, like just it's something.
I'm pro woman's choice to choose. I'm not pro abortion. Okay. So I'm not saying that everybody should just go out and get hundreds of abortions. I'm saying the woman should have the right to choose. It's not my say. It's not my body. It's her body. She's the one that has to suffer for them. She's the one that takes the social consequences. She's the one that has to deal with it. She's the one that statistically is shown to take care of the child longer than the male. So I don't have that right. I don't have the right to create legislation to do it.
And then we're in agreement completely on that. And I knew we would be. It's the little stuff that we've had little nitpicks about, but I would love to talk about that more. But this topic alone, I don't think we can get through the whole thing. Like, that could be a whole show.
Yeah. And so you're looking at less than 1.3% of abortions take place after 21 weeks of pregnancy. Guess how many take place after 24 weeks, which is kind of between 24 and 28 is where you talk about that borderline, late-term abortion, which, by the way, isn't illegal.
I'm going to guess that's going to be like 1 or 0, like super low.
Yeah. So you know what it is? 0.2%. It's just not even 1%. 0.2% of those abortions happen. And that does not even take out those who are actually having them because it's a medical necessity. So that just includes everybody. It doesn't, just include that, right? And so that's the thing is we could talk all day long about abortion. We could talk all day long about whether women should, whether women shouldn't. We can talk about if we're going to legislate it. But all I care about right now is that the Michigan's Right to Life video is BS. That's what it is. That's where my problem is this fucking video is literally just a walking fallacy trying to infiltrate your life. It's like our image, right? There's a big mouth on there. That's what the Right to Lifers feel like. And what was the name of that girl that used to work for Secular Right to Life that used to work with Mike Phelps?
I do not remember.
I can't remember her name either. But she used to try and adamantly argue, and when I would pull out the statistics, even her, she couldn't come back to that. It all came back to, well, we don't know, therefore we should err on the side of caution. And I'm against that. That's not what I see. That's not what I think. I just don't understand how anybody can just accept that and think it's going to be the best thing ever.
Well, my whole position on this video, in this commercial, is simply that this is just, it's a one-sided side of the argument. And if I put the information that we had talked about a little bit ago, those numbers, the statistics, if I gave people that, it would take them a minute to churn through that, to think about that, to understand what kind of morality we're looking at there. That's God's morality if you're giving God control and ownership of the universe. Otherwise, it's an evolutionary situation that's a statistical process that happens or doesn't happen. And, we have a chance of success and a chance of failure. Those numbers change through time and stuff like that. So, to me, it's not an emotional, or it could be an emotional, but it's not a moral problem when it comes to miscarriage. It's basically science and statistics. And do you take care of your body? Do you plan for this pregnancy? Do you do what you can do to help it succeed? These types of things matter, your decisions. But when it comes to just the pure statistics of it, you could do everything right and it could still fail. And those kinds of things aren't talked about in this. It's a very black and white. Either you are pro all of these BBs or you're against all of these BBs. There's no middle ground. And as with everything that we usually talk about, there is such a big fat gray area here that it needs to be considered. And this is just another example of a place where that gray area is not talked about.
Nope. And at some point, fuck people that want to control women. How about that? That's as nice as I could put it. You're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics live on Spreaker, and you're watching us live on Facebook, though we did crash for 30 seconds. We're back up. Chat with us on Spreaker if you would like, and we'll be right back talking about InfraSound and ghosts. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
What's something I could do with a very sexy lady friend of mine that people would find provocative, interesting, and entertaining enough to tune in week after week? Oh, I know! A podcast! If you'd like to hear me and Kate be provocative and thought-provoking week after week, join us on the Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast. We'd love for you to be part of our audiological three-way.
Looking for something new and exciting, or maybe just a change from the old atheist show format? Cellar Door Skeptics Podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.
Hey, this is Keith.
And this is Jen, and we're from Not Another Atheist Podcast.
You're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Join the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of our show.
The family,
if you want to call it that. You know, it's kind of like a family. I hate to say that because I don't want to rip off another podcast that talks about that.
But we're all family. We can all be friends. We can all hate each other and yell at each other over turkey dinner.
Yeah, and in reality, we are a family. You know, I mean, we do things together and we try and support each other, and that's what the secular community is hopefully coming to be about. But without further ado, we do want to talk. We do really want to talk about it. We want to talk about who is helping support us on Patreon.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, real quick shout out. If you are wanting to support us, we could take as little as $1 an episode. We have 2 awesome Patreons named Denny and Alan who donate to the show. Give them a round of applause, Hannah. Oh, come on. Oh, you can't hit the effects button?
I can't reach it. My arm's too short. Grab my strong hand.
Yeah, I'm going to laugh at you. A round of applause. Thank you so much, Denny and Alan, for sponsoring us on Patreon. If you'd like to become a Patreon of ours, please head over to Patreon/Cellar Door Skeptics and make sure you support us for as little as $1 an episode. It'll help buy Hannah a new mic cord, and it'll help pay for the $25 a month that we pay for Spreaker, plus all of our website fees and all of our Facebook fees.
So we are going to plan on doing some charitable stuff too here in the future.
Yes.
We're trying to figure out where we want to send something to. We were going to do a show where we talk about like our competition for who we think is good and whatever, but we'll get to that too.
Yep, and we've already made a donation. We actually went above and beyond any of our Patreon supporters. We went ahead and donated 3 times the income that we've taken in on Patreon. All of it has gone to help a charity that supports cancer. And if you missed that episode, we were on the Atheist Nomads episode about a month ago, and we went ahead and we sponsored them for about $100 to help fight cancer. But anyway, let's talk about ghosts, Hannah. Do you know anything about InfraSound?
I know now because I read your articles.
But you never heard of this before.
I've heard of the concepts. I did not know that the resonant theories and things like that could be the reason people see and hear and stuff like that. So I know about the phenomena of sound and body being, I guess, kind of messed with. But this is a new angle completely. So what the heck, man? Where did you find this, and what did you, I guess, come into this with?
Well, actually, the funny thing was it was my wife. She's the one that came up with this, and she talked about how she thought this was a genius idea. And I was like, okay, so let me look into it. And so there's a couple of different articles. The one she shared with me, she has a Cracked article and a Gizmodo article. And I'm not going to say they're the most scientific thing, right? We're going to get a little goofy here. We don't have to always be 100% scientific, right?
Well, Bill Murray's in some of these photos, man.
He is. That's because Ghostbusters is the best ghost movie in the whole world.
Oh,
period.
Without question.
But they talk about hauntings, and they talk about how, humans are suggestive creatures, right? We want to believe. And we all know this. I mean, and this is not a slight on anybody that is religious, but we do know that we can all be susceptible to beliefs based on our upbringing, based on our experiences, and we know that we have cognitive biases. We just know this. And so they talk about how sound is kind of like mechanical energy, right? And this should fit into your wheelhouse a little bit because you're the engineer here, Hannah. I'm not an engineer, really.
There was some nice engineer talk in here, some science speak. I had some good times with it.
And so they talk about, a pressure wave, right? What is a pressure wave? What are the hertz, And they talk about if you pluck a guitar string, it might vibrate 500 times per second. So the sound wave's frequency is going to be 500 hertz. The typical range for human ears is between 20 and 20,000. So that's quite a big range, right? That's pretty big range, wouldn't you say, Hannah?
Yeah, it's decent. I don't know. There's animals that can really stretch out a lot further. So we always hear about human eyes being perfection and the human ears being perfection and created and perfected perfection. We only have 3 cones of light absorption for our eyes. Well, there's creatures out there that have 26 is the maximum one. 26 different light cones. So there's all kinds of stuff that's interesting out there. But we have a range that we can hear. That's why we can't hear the same high-pitched frequencies that dogs can, because they can hear past the 20,000.
Yes. And so, that's the thing. If you go down to a low level, 20 hertz is typically the minimum that we can hear. Now, they do say, something about if it gets down to 18 hertz, that basically that's the sound they believe is called the fear sound. Now, I'm not 100% sold on that. I'm not. I'm open to discussion. I'm open to change, But what they talk about is the ability to cover long distances, how it reacts when, the acoustic wave guide and where it hits and how it sounds, right? Now, I don't know about you, Hannah, but when I was young, I liked to have subwoofers. I still would, technically, if I could. I still would do that. Still. I do. Well, fuck you. But if I had a trunk and I was able to do that, I would love to put subwoofers in there. Now that I have alternate reasons why I would do that, but I'll be honest, I enjoy the vibrations. I enjoy the sound. I like rap music and I like electronic music and I like hip hop music quite a bit. Now, my metal sounded horrible at that decibel rate. And so I used to have to turn my subwoofers off when I would put metal on because it would vibrate the car to the point where it was worse than actual bass because it would be granular because it would have all that static go into it.
Well, you've got to balance it out. That's one of the things when you got a lot of treble is that you got to have good mid-range speakers and good high-range. I can't remember what the little tweeters, and then have your good subs. But with metal and stuff, you got to have a good range speakers. Most people put all their money into the subwoofer and the big, heavy, low frequency sounds. They don't upgrade any of their mid-grade or their high stuff. So when you hit that, metal in the middle, when it's at that volume, the speakers just distort.
Yeah. So what they did is they talked about kind of what's a puzzle, right? What happens when you're holding vibrating pipes and all of a sudden, you hear it? Can you make your ears bleed? Will they bleed? Is there a girth versus length ratio? How do you get this type of sound? And so they talk about this, that's technically researchers have found that sounds between 7 and 19 hertz can induce fear, dread, and panic. Now, has there ever been any scientific study that has looked at this?
Yes.
There has.
Yeah.
And what study is that, Mr. Hanna?
In one of the articles that we have in here from Gizmodo, it talks about British engineer named Vic Tandy. And he is considered to be the father of this whole type of sound and fear and anxiety research. In his laboratory, he had weird experiences and he had anxiety and he had seen things, and he was doing sound frequency resonance testing, and he had a little piece of foil, something that would react to sound waves in the air, and it would vibrate at intermittent and irregular times when he wasn't expecting it to. Well, it turns out that a small fan, or actually probably a pretty large fan in the facility, was operating at a very low subhuman frequency, so infrasound, and it was running at that 18.9 or 17.9 frequency. And when they stopped that device is when they noticed that a lessening or a reduction or a complete, we don't know if this is how much placebo or not, but it was gone. They had removed this sound and this anxiety and these weird things. And so this guy, Vic Tandy, basically started looking into these types of things, like, well, what the heck could cause that? And he looked into resonance, which is what I mentioned earlier. It seems like human eyes operate, everything in the world has a resonant frequency. We're all particles and atoms that vibrate at certain frequencies. And so according to Tesla and a lot of the resonance stuff, if you match that frequency, it absorbs and becomes twice as big. It's the whole idea of if you have a weight on a bridge and you shake it at the same frequency as the bridge, you can make the whole bridge shake and break down. Well, they tested that, and it takes a little bit more than that. But you can match frequencies and cause weird disturbances, and that's what they're talking about. They're thinking that these disturbances, matching sound waves, matching the frequencies of the eyes, cause weird disturbances where we could see cloudy things and shapes and stuff. That was the whole Vic Tandy experiment, and he had a couple of actually, I think there was a couple of links in here too, where you can actually read some of his papers, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and they talked about, if you could find that right frequency, right, that your eyes were at, you could create illusions, optical illusions. And again,
well, that was the whole the reason for the test, to see.
Yes. Yep. Because if you could create these optical illusions and you could create this necessity to see different things, that would explain a lot. And they talk about, the one big thing that I wanted to go over was they talk about, well, do these things happen naturally? Well, yes, they do. These lower decibel things happen inside of nature normally. And different animals have ability to hear different things. And so that's the amazing part of this whole discovery here is the fact that if you could replicate this, if you could replicate all these different things, you could explain why people see ghosts. And you know, I don't know, Hannah, if it was this show or our old show that I gave my ghost story. I've had a couple different ghost stories.
Yeah, you've done a couple. We've done a couple on this show now. Because you read that big long one last
No. I'm talking about personalized ones.
Oh, yeah, you did. Yeah.
Was it last year? Did I do that?
Yeah, we did it last year for Halloween. It was one of our first few episodes, I think.
Yeah. And so, for me, one of the big things is before I was a true skeptic, I actually thought these things existed. I still have a friend that swears that I saw the same thing he did and says I should never deny this.
Yeah, I'm remembering your story now. I do remember you saying you were a ghost observer.
Yes,
because Hunter was too mean.
Yes, it is, because we didn't want to oppress the ghosts.
Oh man! All right. Well, either way, like we did have it. You had it in a little outline that you put together. It's "Ghost in the Machine" by Vic Tandy. So that was this is his dissertation on this topic, and it's interesting. It's science speak. This is pretty smart stuff. But what he was basically doing was testing the whole idea of frequencies and interference in people and eyes and brains and seeing things and stuff. They've actually tested. There's another in one of the other links that we have in here for either Gizmodo or whatever that they played a symphony for a group of people, and so throughout the symphony, like this, like I said earlier, these big long crescendos, ups and downs, and then in sections they would play these subhuman infrasounds. They would have these background noises of the low frequency, and they were testing. They didn't tell the people ahead of time. They talked to them after they left the presentation, and they asked them, like, well, during these parts, did you feel anything? Were you uneasy? Were you anxious? And they had a result of somewhere around between 20 and 30%. People were saying, yes, I was really anxious, and I was upset, and I was nervous, and weird emotional swings. And so that's the whole idea of the interference that we're seeing when they're saying that this could be something, one of the reasons why we see things. But also, there's the brown noise. And this is the one the Mythbusters tested. And that's basically the one that they tested it. This is stuff that the United States was interested in during the Cold War. They tested all these different kinds of weapons. And one of them was bodily interference and confusion and sound and the brown noise. I think that was like 17 megahertz. And it was something that was, or 17 hertz. And that was something that would basically, you lose control of your bowels. And so on Mythbusters, they tested it. And they had Adam Savage stand in front of this massive wall of speakers. And he was having a blast. He was having fun. But the cool part about that test was it was a negative for him. But a bunch of people on the crew were reporting being anxious and nervous and having all kinds of strange side effects from this sound that they couldn't hear, but they were on edge. So this is kind of the same kind of stuff that we were talking about for this stuff.
Yeah. And it's funny because Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about this on his podcast, Star Talk, which is a little more popular than we are. But he talks about this exact same thing in the exact same, article, The Ghost in the Machine. And he talks about how there's reasons a lot of people do this inside of certain areas, right? When I did mine, it was in a graveyard. I was by, some stone structures. They talk about how they have haunted houses, and a lot of times, if you have like a brick area or a stone area, that's where it is. And so, if you think about it, and you sit there and you can correlate all the two, why do we not see more ghost sightings in the middle of nowhere? The problem I have is that it's really hard to identify or determine whether you're just crazy and whether you're hallucinating, right? And so, if I was hallucinating for whatever reason, how would you be able to determine the difference between this and infrasound? And I don't know. Some of me thinks this would be a great thing for somebody to investigate. But at the exact same time, why do we care if ghosts exist? They're cool. They're fascinating. They make great fucking movies, But in reality,
it's
who
kind
cares?
Of a big deal
Who gives a
because
shit?
It's I guess it would be proof of a soul, of something that continues on beyond the body. So, I mean, this is a cool thing to try to learn. And the reason why I really like this idea is because here's an explanation, a scientific explanation. And we can repeat this, and that's what they're trying to do, is prove it out. So they have experiments where they put people in spaces, and they blast their bodies with this sound, and it's scientifically repeatable for a certain percentage of people that are affected by this. This is more evident. We're not concluding anything, that everything you see in a gray, dark alleyway that looks like a shadow, a ghost, or whatever, this isn't proof, but it's more evidence that supports the scientific claim that you're not seeing the afterlife or the supernatural.
Exactly. With that, we're going to move on to our next topic. A little bit more interesting, a little bit more controversial. We're going to talk about cash for charities when we come back with more Cellar Door Skeptics. We'll be right back after this quick break.
This is Ishmael Brown, the HNIC from the Angry Black Rant Podcast, and you're listening to the Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hi, my name's Callie.
And I'm Ari.
If you're like most of us, you're very concerned about the gay agenda's plans for world domination.
Are you tired of seeing glitter all over every damn thing?
Do you hate rainbows as much as any other red-blooded American?
Then we have the answer for all your baseless fears and unjustified paranoia.
Presented exclusively on Secular Media Network, the Gaytheist Manifesto is your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement.
You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, and at gaytheistmanifesto.secularmediagroup.com.
If you're not ready to get in line for your mandatory gay marriage and you're terrified of short-haired women in pantsuits, come have a listen and get up to date on their plans. You'll be glad you did.
Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
This is Trav Ramon, host of the By Any Means podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution. We have cookies.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to more Cellar Door Skeptics. We covered the bullshit Right to Life video from Michigan. And yeah, fuck you for not tweeting back at me, Michigan Right to Life. Maybe somebody will tweet back at you and be like, hey, you should listen to this episode and come on our show. But we also talked about infrared sound and ghosts and whether Hannah's ever had even a ghost experience.
Infrared sound
What did I
would be
say?
light sound.
Infrared. Well, there
Close
you
enough.
go. Anyway, this segment, we're going to talk about cash for charities. And we're going to talk about a little bit of an experiment, something Hannah brought to the conversation. So, Hannah, I'm going to let you kick this segment off.
It's cool, and it's crazy, and it's basic income-y, and it's very socially. It's a charity called Give Directly, and the whole concept is that we're trying to remove the corruption, the BS, the people, the money, all of the different levels of basically drainage. For you give a donation, you want that donation to go and help someone. So this group, 93% of the money goes direct to the people, and it goes in the form of cash. So if you make a donation, your donation is going to the people that get it in cash. No guilt, no whatever they need to use it for. I mean, it says on the site they can use it for food, for housing, for cars, for transportation, gas, booze, cigarettes, whatever they really want. It's
Really?
cash.
They can use it for booze or cigarettes?
Yeah. And so what this is a small social experiment, the idea of basic income. I don't know if you're familiar with basic income, but it's essentially you get an income. You're a human, you're alive. Here's a little bit of money to keep you alive. This is the basic human income. And this experiment is kind of trying to see if this is a feasible thing, because they're going into a very, very poverty-stricken area in Kenya, like people that have really nothing, and they're giving them cash. the amount of money is approximately one entire year of salary. These people are absolutely astounded. In fact, in the article, it talks about the problems that they're having. When they go to offer this money, people think they're trying to scam them. They think it's a lie. And they're saying that they believe it might be associated with devil worship or evil money or cursed money. So they've been trying to basically get this to the understanding, like, listen, no, we really do want to just give you money. There's no ties. There's no, here, you can eat this Bible because Bibles taste so good. There's nothing like that. It's your money, and we're trying to just see if this is a good thing. Do you do the right thing, or do you use it badly? And so this hopefully will work out really well. And they started it in April and May, and they've been getting some good responses and some good stuff that's happening. The interview that I heard on NPR said that they were finding that people were really using it to start businesses. They were using it to do things, not so much just to buy food, stay alive, but to actually try to become a working member of society. Of course, there are outliers, but the whole idea of this is giving people money and seeing if they do the right thing to change the way we see charity, change the way we see welfare. Because, I mean, if you give someone food stamps, what are they going to spend it on? Food. Well, who does that benefit? The food industry. Who's a lobbyist for these types of things? The food industry. So there's a lot of weird interests that are matching in here. And so these guys that give directly are trying to get around that. That's the whole thing in a nutshell.
Huh. And see, that's interesting because if they want to give directly, I'll be honest, this almost kind of sounds like a semi-libertarian model here. We're going to hand you a pile of cash and tell you to go do the right thing versus sitting around and dictating what you can spend your money on. And so that, some of me wishes we had Justin Hale on here because, Justin could represent a libertarian idea. Now, he probably would tell you that we shouldn't give anybody money and pull yourself up by the bootstraps, blah, blah, blah.
That's where it goes. Usually the libertarians are saying that you should give money if you want, but you don't have to, and it's not really a necessity. And then the socialist end of these things is like, it should be kind of from a central location. And that's kind of what we're looking at. This is like, to me, this is the whole idea of like a really democratic socialist idea. This is, people can choose to be part of an organization that's distributing wealth back down to the poorest people to try to elevate everyone's station. And I think this matches very close with something that Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren would support. But in our country, in our society, giving people money, it's one of the reasons why I don't give money to panhandlers. Because I just don't. It may be an ingrained bias from my upbringing, but I just don't trust them to do the right thing. Now, if something like this happened in the United States and they had, hey, this is what we did. We tracked what they did with their money for 1 year, 5 year, and 10 years, and they mostly, on a majority, did the right thing, that would change my view of giving cash to people in need.
Well, and maybe this is the difference between Kenya and us. They don't have the same draws that we have here, right?
Well, they don't have anything.
I mean, we
have nothing.
You can walk, if you live downtown, you can walk corners and find places to get alcohol. You can walk corners and get cigarettes. I won't say you can get drugs that easily, but, I'm sure if you want to get them, you could. And the problem is in Kenya, they don't have a lot of those necessities. So maybe it works out better there because they don't have the same temptations.
Yeah, there might not be as much temptation in these areas. They're very rural.
Yeah. And so they don't have what you can get here. So that might be the difference. Maybe that's the outlying factor that allows, giving them cash difference.
Be more successful there, maybe.
Yes. And so, in our area, and I'll be honest, I don't always give money to the homeless people, but I do because look at it this way, Hannah. If you are handed a shitty deal in life, and even if you've made mistakes and you don't have a way to turn your life around, you're going to do something to make it better in some way, shape, or form. And if that means you get so drunk that you can't remember it, it is what it is, right? I can't fault them. Why don't we have programs that help them get back on their feet outside of Christian missions? Why don't we have government-funded programs like they do in Salt Lake City, right? Where they turn around and they allow you to live inside of these houses, go panhandle and come home. You have a place to stay. Those people want to turn their lives around. We don't do that. And I'll blame the secular community a little bit in not figuring out how we can reach out faster. And I'm not judging you, so don't take this wrong, Hannah. This is not me saying, hey, screw you for this mentality. But your mentality is shared by a lot of people.
I know it is, and it's something that is difficult for me to get by. But as an evidentiary person, I have never seen anything. I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt. They'll do the right thing. And I don't know why, but it's so hard to just see someone that, that obviously I would think a charitable group that could help guide them would be better.
Yeah.
And then this case here would be an example of that being actually the opposite, that they could do what they need to do and go on their own, which is great. But I think that's what I need from me. It's just some kind of information, some kind of evidence to say, okay, this is actually a really good thing. And I would love to, if anyone knows of this stuff, this would be great.
And I think the big thing here, though, Hannah, is that we got to figure out how are we going to partner with interfaith charities faster. How are we going to take charity out of the church and put it into the government? Because honestly, the church has done this for a long, long time. And we can criticize religion all we want, but we do have to admit that the church has taken care of people, whether under due pressure or not.
Yeah.
They have done that.
They're very good at it. They have the channels made. They've got all the buses, the vans, the regular weekend things set up.
And we talked about, we had Jennifer Bean from the CFI Michigan on, and we talked about building a community. And in our little community here in Michigan, the CFI has done very well. They have meals for those in need, even in the secular community. They have ways that you can go get involved regularly. And that's the big thing here, is that if we had stronger communities that wanted to work together, and we were able to put aside a little bit of that distaste for that Christian sentiment, we would be able to change society faster. But the big problem is that we have churches that are not taxed, and they're able to spend this money because it's, in essence, if you were going to have to pay a 20% tax, there's 20% of that income that's yours for free. So they have more money to be able to do these things. What we got to do is we got to change how people perceive charities. We got to create an open book. We got to get rid of the Clinton-esque charities that we talked about 4 episodes ago, where the fundraising is bullshit.
Well, we talked about it in the past. I don't think we talked about it on this show, but back in our history, we've talked about charitable stuff in the Form 990 for all the 501c3 group, which are religious organizations. If you get a 501c3 and you are a secular group, you still have to fill out your Form 990, basically where all your money goes. Well, churches are exempt from the Form 990. They don't have to explain where their money goes, which is why mega churches and big giant groups like Jerry Falwell, Liberty University have the ability to influence money or influence elections and politics and stuff, because they essentially have dark money that they can throw where they want. But I don't have a big problem working with religious people and doing these charitable events. Like, that isn't a major issue, even if they are whatever. The problem I have is when they're trying to, influence, like, okay, here's a hot dog. Oh, and guess what? You should come to our church because you're not saved.
I agree with you, because we have that here in Zealand. If they work
nice and don't say anything, then more power to them. Let's all just hang out and help people.
Yeah, we get that in Zealand, and I don't disagree with you. And I think that's a mindset we got to change. But your article from the Business Insider that you posted here, it talks about the concept of what this is. And I think that's a subject that's very highly controversial. See, I can wrap it all back around for how we talked about earlier. Because think about it. If you're giving money just to the poor people, and you're just giving them money because they're low income, you're essentially giving them base pay right for free.
That's the basic income.
You're giving them that. Now, we do that here in America a little bit, but we make you work for your welfare. You don't get just welfare. And we have lots of restrictions and regulations, and we have extreme government bureaucracy that fucks with people, especially on the healthcare side.
It makes it really expensive.
Yes. And so this is a great social experiment, like you talked about, because on a base level, they're giving money, and they're able to give them just money and let them spend it how they want. They're saying, here you go, take our money, do what you want with it, just don't be stupid. And of course, over there, they have less to be stupid about. But that's the big thing. What we need to do is get some sort of an international database, and they talk a little bit about basic income experiments. But that's what we need to do. They need to plan basic income experience. We need to make this a scientific discussion. We need to actually involve some sort of a scientific process, because think about it. If it failed in Finland but succeeded in the Netherlands, what's the reason for it?
I'm excited about the one that's going to be in Oakland, California.
Yeah. And that's, for me, that's the big thing. Even if we chose small pockets, can we define them? Can we call it out? Can we post the study and then allow people to pick it apart? And instead of getting defensive and trying to defend it, say, okay, so those are fair criticism. Let's change our way of thinking. But you got to fund it first. They got to have money. The money's got to come from somewhere. And at this point, the country is so fucking far behind on giving money to disproportionate individuals. It's not even funny.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it in Michigan, one of the episodes a while ago, about charity and cash, and there was one of the welfare programs was a cash program. Michigan tried it out. We tested it, and what did they do? They cut it to pieces. They chopped it all to hell before they could really find out, hey, is this good? Are people doing what they're supposed to do? Are people cheating? I mean, we've heard of all of these things like, oh man, all these people on welfare are cheating the system, and they got cash pocket full of cash money and everything. Well, I mean, there are people that are cheating, and that happens, but some of the articles that I've seen throughout the internet, and we could probably throw one in if someone's really interested, that we see a lot of fraud, but from people higher up on the social ladder than you would expect. A lot of middle class, people just below the middle class line are the ones that are really using the system and battling around and cheating as best they can. But regardless of that whole thing, is that this entire experiment here, what they have it set up for is for that long-term information. So you mentioned a minute ago, Finland, the Netherlands, and Oakland, California, there are pending experiments that they're going to be doing some basic income stuff for the people in that area. Well, for this test, this Kenyan test, they're looking at about $30 to $35 million total raised. Apparently, they've got about 2/3 of that. But what they're going to be doing, and now that they have the ability to better test and follow where people go with mobile phones, and there's a physical or a digital record of where you go and what you're doing, that they can track people for longer periods of time. Because if you imagine keeping track of someone in Kenya where there's no phone, no anything, it would be really difficult if they just up and move to a new village. Well, that now with this proliferation of cell phone technology, that they're actually able to keep track of some people a little bit better. They can monitor families, and they keep in touch with these people to see how they do for the first year, the first 5 years, the first 10 years. And then you can see the major benefits. This is a long-term investment. And so the $30 million is the necessity for approximately 12 years for this project, for the 6,000 Kenyan families. That's the whole project. I mean, that's 6,000. So let's say times 4 people in your family. We're looking at 24,000 people that will basically get their income, basic income, for a decade. And we'll see if it, in a poor, poverty-stricken country, if giving them money instead of bags of rice and cornmeal makes their lives better. And if it works, then we can get by. We can change what we do when it comes to foreign aid and foreign welfare and anything that people are like, well, we're just throwing our money away. Well, we have proof now. This is a good way to get people to move up to the next level in society. I mean, it's just awesome, and I would love to see the result, and I hope it's successful. There's a lot of people that in the economic world that are saying this is just going to fail. It's going to fail miserably. If it does, good. Then we have a solution there too. We know that it fails. But people being so afraid to invest and put any money into something like this, it's just, to me, it's the American, well, I don't know the answer, so I don't even want to try it. We haven't done it or never do this stuff like that.
Yep. And I agree with you, Hannah. I agree 100%. The best part about this Give Directly charity, or 501c3, is that they're a very diverse committee. So it's not like it's just a bunch of white guys saying, hey, let me do this. So that's a plus. But on that note, we're going to end the segment, and we're going to go move on to our last segment, because I think this is going to be a longer segment for the last part. So bear with us as we go to one more commercial break, and we'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hey guys, this is Wyatt Mathers from the Atheist Avengers podcast. You are listening to the Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution.
Hi, this is Dan, Ryan, and Matt with the Godless Revolution podcast. We've had a lot of great guests on this show, such as Russell Glasser, Dan Arrow, Brian Fields, David Silverman, Doug Mesner, a.k.a. Lucian Greaves, and Joey Kirkman, whom we love a lot.
We've also had a lot of really cool local guests. And we're a podcast that likes to fight for the separation of church and state and against anti-skepticism of all kinds.
You should give us a listen, because if you don't, you're going to be really sad.
Make your ears happy. Listen to the Godless Revolution podcast.
If you guys like what you're hearing on Cellar Door Skeptics, please consider sponsoring us on our Patreon page. Our goal at Cellar Door Skeptics is to help promote more science, skepticism, secularism, and humanism in the world. We want to create better content for our podcast and for you, the listener, all while trying to help promote local activism. We're going to strive to make better podcasts, and I'll tell you what, we're even going to contribute some of the proceeds to charity. So please join us over at Patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to make sure that you sponsor us for as little as $1 an episode. Thank you guys so much, and prepare for the revolution.
This is Deborah McTaggart from Beyond the Trailer Park, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Look into the sky once again, I wonder why I'm completing these cynics and even in my life. I've never seen it coming through the demons that I summon like a legion by the dozen. I don't know what I'm becoming. I've seen the lights of horizons you may never know. But I've seen the gates of hell so
We're definitely a metal.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Yeah, you bet your ass I love metal, Hannah.
We're gonna, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna get my guitar over here. I'm gonna throw a drum beat in and throw a riff in. We're gonna let you just go to town like a real scream, not like a low growl on a microphone. We're gonna see what it sounds like when the Tanner scream starts up. We let you warm up outside or something.
We could. I have been practicing a little bit. I do have to be careful because I do have a friend that actually can scream real well. Like, that's what he does for his side job. He has an actual death metal band. So, like, he's a lot better at it than I am. But I'll be willing to give it a shot. Maybe we'll redo our intro.
Death metal show.
We could. Day. I've already. All right, fair enough. I've already talked to them about doing an interview because they're a local metal band. Just so you know. So we're already in talks to do an interview with them. I'm going to help them with some video stuff, and I'm hoping, and then they're going to help me with some intro music or maybe some commercial music. So we're looking to try and localize everything so that we can basically say we support local artists.
And we're going full socialist, barter and trade. Get past that monetary garbage. That sounds awesome, man. I love that idea. We trade work and stuff in my company and work all the time. It's like, hey, you know what? I made these 2 parts for you. Put this fire out. Something that you had going on that was absolute emergency. Just put it on a shelf for a rainy day. When we need something, you help us out. And I personally think that's a great way for society to work. With everything being monetized, it kind of takes, the personal, the human aspect out of it. And I love doing a favor for someone and they do a favor for you. It's much more gratifying.
Yep. And so, yeah, you're right. And that's exactly why I want to do it. And I've been friends with this guy for a long time. He actually took voice lessons. And I know some local metal bands around here. So I've been trying to work with them and try and get some things going so that we could do all local music and we could basically be as Michigan-ish as we can. And I know that sounds weird, for any of those listening outside of Michigan, but I don't know. It's kind of fun, right? I like Michigan to an extent, and I enjoy the fact that we can support local artists because in the end, for me, that's the big thing. We could talk about how we want to support other people. We could talk about how we want to support, the life and community around us. But if we don't actually do it, we're not going to change the world. And I know you don't donate to charities personally. I donate to charities personally. But I also want to build a smaller community here and get people to feel comfortable. And that's one of the big things for me is if this can't happen, how are we going to make people feel comfortable? And we talked a little bit about this, you and I personally, you know.
Like comfortable just basically saying what you think as opposed... Okay.
Yep. Saying
so it's
what
just
you
an
think.
open community as opposed to any one particular topic. Atheist or socialist or whatever.
Yeah, and we talked about that. That's been a big draw for us and what we want to do with the show. We don't want to pigeonhole Christians out of listening to us, and we don't want to pigeonhole atheists, and we know we're not for everybody. We know that.
I'll tell the amazing atheist he's an idiot to his face.
I'll tell him he's a piece of fucking shit. How about that? We got the explicit tag going. That dude is a fucking goddamn asshole. And that dude, he's in it for the money, man.
You're definitely getting the explicit tag on this one now.
Oh, I had it on before we even started. And he is. That dude's in it for the money. And I'm sorry, Jeremiah Bannister, if you think he has any fucking merit. The guy has literally nothing good to say. But enough about the amazing atheist, because we ain't doing a show about him. I don't care about him. And I want to talk about healthcare. So you posted this meme, and I'll be honest, every time I see a meme, I think, Hannah, are you sure you know what you're talking about? Because you have shared some questionable things before. And I see memes, and I kind of wonder, in reality, you know, how accurate they are. How much are they just to get your attention, and they're just full of all this piss poor research?
Did you go through any of the numbers on this one?
I did.
Okay,
I'm not.
good.
I'm not telling. I'm setting it up, motherfucker.
Well, the
Jesus.
reason is because like I saw this and I was like, oh hell, man, I got pissed. I don't know if you got pissed at the same time, like these people getting overpaid. But...
Okay, so all right, so let's break the two apart. So yes, if these numbers are true, I had a heart attack. Right? Okay, hold on. God damn it! You got to set it up, Hannah. So. I agree with you. If these numbers are true, I would have had a heart attack. I can look at that and go, what that person makes in 1 year, and the links are in the description for anybody listening live. You can follow along right with us. If you made that much money in 1 year.
This meme was really popular on Facebook a while ago. It's basically the health insurance company CEO's total pay for a year. It's 2013 and 2014. So the lowest one was $8.1 million a year, but the highest was 66.
Exactly. But I'm going to tell you, just looking at that makes me skeptical. That feels like a Occupy Democrats fucking post. I'm sorry, it does. And the majority of the shit that they post can be debunked. They don't have actual big facts that go behind it. And that's my problem with memes, honestly. I enjoy them for humor's sake.
Well, that's why we have
and
Ed
for
Brayton.
Stimulating conversation. But when I look at this, I'm very skeptical of this. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I disagree with you or that you're wrong. I'm going to tell you, let's look at the numbers, right? Let's look at what the numbers are. Are these factual numbers? Where do they come from? What do they include?
All right, so these people, their total income is massive. Like I said, $8 million to $66 million a year for CEOs. Those are real numbers. That's not fake. I actually included Chicks on the Right. Absolutely astoundingly annoying website, but they checked it. They went to these websites and they checked their numbers. They looked at their actual, they break down their total salaries and they give that information, and you can see their totals. And they confirm in the same way that you can see through the links that they have, but it's basically their fact sheets for the company. Well, these numbers here, $8 to $60 million a year. I mean, we're talking professional athlete numbers. We're talking, $20 million a year, about as high as really good athletes get. So, I mean, that was my first thought was, okay, these people get paid a ton of money. But entertainers, I think Taylor Swift made $40 million last year or something like that. These are really high numbers, but for insurance CEOs, I mean, they're bad. They're not bad for entertaining, but those are huge numbers. So we keep seeing all these things about people having their premiums increase, just raise through the roof. And I saw this meme, and so that was the initial sharing was these CEOs are getting so overpaid. That's the reason your premiums are going up.
Okay. And I'll grant that premise, but I'm going to ask, where the hell are we getting CEO pays? That's what I want to know.
In the Chicks on the Right thing, they give the fact sheet for the CEO. So if you click on according to their fact sheet.
I did. and I'm not seeing it, and that's my problem right here. And maybe I'm just not looking at the right part, but I don't see where it says CEO pay on here, dude.
Hey, well, we have to dig through.
Okay,
a little bit further.
And see, that's my problem. And I'm not trying to be picky, and I'm not trying to derail the segment here, but that's my biggest problem is I want the actual facts. Like, I don't want somebody to tell me, hey, this is what these people make. I want to see it. I want to see how they can actually get that money, because for me, that's the bigger thing. If that's true, right? If United Health is paying out millions of dollars to CEOs, just millions of dollars, and we could turn around and take that. And that's what the chicks on the right actually did very good, is they took that dollar amount and explained how they could give it back to the employees, right? How would it be different if they gave it to, the customers? How does it actually affect? That's the facts that I want. And I agree with you. If these numbers are accurate, there's a lot of money that needs to go back to people. There's a lot of money people that are bitching about how much health insurance has gone up, but we haven't looked at where the money is coming from, where the money is being spent. And I agree with you, and I've argued the same point, is that there is a lot of health insurance companies that are making billions of dollars off the backs of us, and that there is very little government fucking regulation. The government is not regulating exactly how much money they can bill out. As somebody in the chat said, that there's ability to skim money off of false charges. I've been a victim of this. I've seen these other things. There was an article that went around about somebody that crowdfunded $40 because the hospital charged them $40 to hold the baby. And it's all because the nurse had to stand in there. So I get it, right? On a business side of things, you got to pay a nurse to stand in there. That's a one-on-one. That's a lot of money, right? I get that. And I get it. And at my company, we talk about what's our rate sheet, right? We have a rate sheet. We talk about when we have to do value add stuff, how much is it going to cost the client? We talk about, what is our fixed and loaded prices, right? Because if I build them at a fixed price, I'm not covering any of the variance cost of overtime, their CTO time, their insurance, the insurance we have to pay, the taxes. We're not talking about any of that. We have to absorb that. So if I have a 10% margin, and I still then got to turn around and actually pay out all these other things, I'm not only getting a 2% margin, And so if you don't talk about a fully loaded price, I get it. But that's the problem. If these insurance companies are going unregulated, and they are, for example, there is a place in Iowa where you can get one insurance company through Obamacare. How does that drive that insurance company without competition? Yeah. How do you drive them down?
The whole point of the market was to create competition between these markets, between these insurance companies. It's like, hey, we're competing to get your business. So, anyways, you were talking about you wanted some confirmations on total salaries and stuff. I found on Forbes' website they have basically all these CEOs, all this information. We'll include that in the link for their total income. But 5-year income for David M. Cordiani, who is the Cigna guy. His total compensation last year was $13.4 million, and his 5-year was $28.7 million. So, we're looking at millions of dollars.
Who is that again?
David Cordiani, up and left, Cigna.
Yep.
That's 27.2. I got 28.7. So in 5 years, in 1 year, 13.4. We're looking at millions and millions of dollars, and essentially the whole argument was that these CEOs, they're way overpaid. I mean, we've looked at the country itself. They're looking at the average CEO pay is around 750 times the pay of the lowest employee in these corporations. So CEO pay is wildly extravagant compared to what it used to be. It used to be 100 times, 50 times. Now it's 750 on average. These are massive numbers. Growth in income and inequality. All of the arguments that a lot of the democratic socialists and the people more towards the left and progressive side have been making for years and years and years. And that's the whole thing that this meme is saying. But their premise, if they're saying this is the reason your premiums are going up. And so the chicks on the right thing, they break it down that we're looking at $1, $2, $3 a year for all of the people, and that's the info on the fact sheet stuff they're talking about that you were looking at. That is for the total number of people they claim are part of their insurance plans. So breaking that apart, that's part of the math, that we're looking at very low numbers, $1, $2, $3 a year when you distribute it into all the people. So if you took the entire salary's income, or CEO's salary and their income and distribute it to all the people, you would see really no change in their insurance premium. And so the meme itself, to me, is busted. Like, these people get paid a crazy amount of money, but it's not the reason we're seeing these premium increases. I think it's extravagant and wrong they get paid that much, but it's not the reason our premiums are going up. That's basically the verdict that I got off of this.
Yeah. Okay, so good. So we debunked the meme. And I agree with you. And that's the funny thing, that chicks on the right, they talk about that. I actually agree with them. You can't just take their income and say that that's the reason why we're failing, because it's not. And you and I would probably agree with that. But that's not the sole fiduciary concept here, right?
No, not
you can
even
look
close.
at that Cigna's fact sheet and you can talk about how much they have in assets. They have $57 billion in assets.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that is true? Can we see your assets sheet? Can we do that?
A lot of these claims, I mean, when you put them on a website and you're a huge corporation like that, there are watchdog groups. There are people whose job it is just to check assets, to check your total value of your corporation, to see if you're lying. False advertising is still a thing that's prosecuted in this country. Antitrust, not so much. One of the reasons that I distrust these mega massive monster corporations is because we're getting to the point where our old antitrust laws are no longer really enforced. And like you said, one insurance company in the market for certain places like in Iowa or Wyoming, I mean, that's a monopoly. That company can just charge whatever they want. They can do anything they want in that area, and there's no other option. It's either that or you go to a private outside the market and hopefully you see if you get a better deal there, but you will not get any government subsidies. So the whole thing on this is people are upset about the premiums going up. And, I mean, they're going up big for a lot of people. One of the things that I added in here is just kind of why these things are happening. But the whole idea of the premiums, where they initially set it up, was they had no real good information. And so they kind of guessed, and they realized that they need to make changes. So what I want to start with is just why the costs themselves are going up. So, like, we've heard a bunch about the... Oh, we got some... Okay, anyways, we've heard a lot about the pharmaceutical pills, the drugs, having massive problems about being just price gouged horribly. So, like, it's like the EpiPen situation we had not too long ago. Why would that have to go up 500%? There's no reason for it. And so the federal government is looking into it, trying to figure out why these things are happening. And, I mean, this is happening to insulin. This is happening to drugs for liver disease. And what's the reason why all these things are happening? Well, the generics are out. Those are cheaper now. The patents have been lost by these mega corporations. Well, apparently there are groups of companies that produce generics. Myla, the people who raise the EpiPen price, they are one of the largest producers of generic drugs in the country. And all these generic drugs are increasing incredibly in value. So it seems like there's like a price fixing group where everybody just kind of says, you know what, we should